You're watching the UpStreamLife.com. I am the founder and editor. Today's guest is Sanjay Dasari, the co-founder of WayCool. WayCool is an agri-stack platform. They work with farmers, they work with FMCG companies, they work with kirana stores, and much more. Importantly, they use data to make agri better. By the way, agriculture in India is very complex. You want to know why it's complex, then watch this interview. This interview is brought to you by Finverse.guru, a financial upskilling and reskilling app. They help you discover the inner financial student in you. So it doesn't matter if you're an engineer or an artist, or if you're also a commerce student, that's where you have to go to reskill fast. Check out this interview. Enjoy it with Sanjay Dasari. Sanjay, how are you?
Great, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. Interested in AgTech. I am very interested, and we're all building platforms here. So what's WayCool?
So WayCool is a tech-enabled food value chain company focusing on basically two things. First and foremost is reducing food wastage in the country, and the second is improving farmer livelihood.
Wastage and improving farmer livelihood, right?
Yes.
Big words. So, but you're right, because if people are watching this, I think 35% of there's value loss in the supply chain.
Yes.
And farmers don't have enough money.
Yes.
So let's talk about both. Farmer wastage, food wastage first, and then we'll talk about farmers and livelihood.
Perfect.
How are you solving for wastage in this country?
So food wastage is an interesting problem because India wastes between 25 to 45% of food that we harvest, and it's a concerning dichotomy because you have so much food being wasted, but at the same time you have such high rates of malnutrition and food insecurity in the country as well. What's interesting to note is that India has similar overall food wastage levels as other countries. Let's take the West, for example. Let's take the US. The difference is where in the Western countries, food wastage happens on the shelf, on the retail stores or at homes. In India, the wastage happens in the supply chain, in the physical act of transporting from farm to fork. There are two main issues that causes the food wastage. The first is the lack of information transparency, the mismatch in demand and supply. And the second is much more simply the physical damage that happens when you're transporting. It's very important to understand the architectural differences between the Indian and, let's say, again, the US food value chains. Because if you look at the US, for example, the average farm holding in the US is about 500 acres or so. Average farm holding in India is 2 acres. So the cost of first mile aggregation, just like collecting enough produce from multiple different small farmers to fill one truck alone, takes so much time, energy, effort that there you have wastage happening already. And it's multiple different steps from point A to point B as well, because it's a common misconception that you have one large evil middleman making disproportionate amount of money.
That's the narrative always.
Correct. But the reality is you have so many different people all performing extremely crucial and critical tasks in the supply chain and not making enough money for themselves to reinvest into the supply chain and make it a little bit better. So, for example, you have anywhere between 7 to 15 different steps in the supply chain from point of harvest to reaching your retail store shelves in India versus 2 to 4 in the United States. So that fragmentation is one of the biggest causes for food wastage in the country.
Okay, and we're getting into farmer income in a bit, but let's stick to wastage. So you said all these guys are creating some sort of value, these traders, right? Or these distributors, you want to call them? Middlemen?
Sure.
Right? So what they do is they go to a farmer, they say that, okay, we expect something to be, price of something to be going up in about 6 months. Would you grow this for us? Is that the typical conversation with the farmer?
That would be a great conversation to have because that's a little bit more, it doesn't happen necessarily. The conversations today are a little bit more transactional than that. I'll give you a perfect example of when we started the company 7.5 years ago. Myself and my co-founder Karthik spent lots of time traveling to actual farms, meeting farmers and understanding the traditional supply chain, how it worked. So we met a farmer in the Hosur area who was growing, let's say tomatoes. As he was growing tomatoes, he's only had a 2-acre plot of land. Therefore, he didn't make enough money to own his own unit of transportation. He didn't have a tractor or a vehicle to take his stuff from his farm to the local source market itself. So what did he do? He harvested his crop, put it into a gunny bag because he didn't have a crate either, and took the gunny bag to the side of the road and waited. And he waited in hope for some truck person to come pick it up from him. And when the transportation partner came and picked it up, there was no written documentation of evidence saying how many kgs I've taken from you, what is the price I'm giving you, etc. It's on a trust basis. So the transportation partner takes it from the farmer, takes it to the local mandi, and there's a person who is there, the source market, which is the one next to the harvesting area. And that person there collects it from multiple different transportation partners, aggregates it into a larger unit, and then sends it from his point to the demand market. Let's say Hosur to Bangalore, for example. When it reaches Bangalore, the same process is reversed. So a large truck is taken into smaller units to wholesalers, exactly. And it goes on and on and on. The first time the product is actually where quality is checked is oftentimes at the demand market. The whole time the farmer's been waiting to get some kind of information as to how much am I going to get paid, when am I going to get paid, how much quantity of which quality have you received. None of that information goes back to the farmer. So a lot of the risk is borne by the farmer, which is why at WayCool, we flipped the entire model around. The biggest sort of learning for us in this industry has been that if you operate this industry in the traditional supply-led, push-driven kind of concept, the potential for reformation is quite limited. Whereas if you do what WayCool is doing, which is a demand-driven, pull-driven supply chain, that is a completely different approach. I'm happy to explain a little bit more about that as well.
About this. This is interesting. So for those of us watching from abroad, they look at India and look at its complexity. I hate my friends in the UK because they think India is Punjab. It's not it's much more than that, because Punjab itself is big in wheat, right?
Yeah.
So, but India has bigger states and bigger problems. So let's talk about the complexity of the chain that you just mentioned. I like the fact that you said there's a guy with a small landholding, takes his produce to the road, waits for the transportation partner, and the transportation partner picks it up, takes it to the mandi, local mandi, and from the local mandi, it goes into the bigger cities, and it's further pasted around into smaller trucks and sent into the retail market, right? But is that the process that you want to stick to? For those of us watching from abroad, they should understand India differently. So let's pick 2-3 crops. Since you do fruits and vegetables, you also do oils. Do you do wheat at all?
So we do fruits and vegetables, rice, pulses, and dairy.
Okay.
Those are the main
Let's look at the supply chain for all these quickly. Let's start with rice, because we're all South Indians. And how does the rice supply chain work? Is it organized?
It is relatively more organized than horticultural products, and the reason for that is because you can store it. And the fruits and vegetables industry, when you look at Western solutions for the fruits and vegetables category, the assumption is cold chain, cold storage is the way to go. And that's actually interestingly how we got the name WayCool as well. Because we had a very similar kind of philosophy. Coming at this industry from two different sides, I was coming at it from an angle of solving for agrarian distress, solving for food wastage, and my co-founder was coming at it from an angle of fixing supply chain problems. And both of us wanted to have an impact in this space. Our assumption was, based on multiple different reports that we saw, was that cold chain was the problem. And if you had more cold storage capacity and more cold storage connectivity, then you would be able to reduce food wastage, because that's what happened in the West. They invested in cold chain and therefore food wastage started to come down. Reality is, the way the India is set up, given that majority of what each city consumes is often grown within 100 to 200 kilometer radius of that city.
Local consumption.
Local consumption, exactly. Yes. And because of that, you don't actually need cold chain. So today, a majority of our supply chain runs between 4 to 24 hours. We don't have anything, we don't keep anything more than a day.
Those who are watching abroad, they should also realize that cuisines change every 200 kilometers or even 150 kilometers, and therefore the supply chain is localized. But yet there's 35% wastage, which is what you're solving for.
Yes.
So you're saying in that 200 kilometers, the food gets wasted too?
So there gets wasted for a different reason.
Okay.
Now let's take the information transparency issue that I mentioned earlier. So if you're a farmer in Hosur, you're bang in between Chennai and Bangalore, you grow 100 kgs of tomatoes. What do you do with those tomatoes? Do you send them to Chennai or do you send them to Bangalore? Oftentimes, farmers don't have the information necessary to know where to send them. So they send 50 kgs to Bangalore, 50 kgs to Chennai.
Just random.
Random. In this example, this is a very simplified example. Bangalore would have needed 70 kgs and you send 50, creating a shortage. So prices will increase. Chennai would require 30, you send 50. So because you said excess, this is a surplus, the prices come down.
So the middlemen themselves make that mistake.
Because everyone's operating on the next line of information that they have, which is who's going to buy this from me, not who has placed an order with me in advance. And that's the difference between a supply-led supply chain and a demand-led supply chain. In a WayCool model, a demand-led supply chain, we're able to forecast well in advance, about 3 to 6 months in advance, what quantity of each particular item will be required in which pin code. Basis that we actually, the AI model that we built on the back end spits us out a cultivation plan for our 300,000 farmers that we have. So we have farmers growing to specific requirements that we know we'll have as a company moving forward. So when a farmer grows,
are in your platform too, the traders.
So we work with farmers directly for the most part, either farmers or FPOs, farmer producer organizations, because for us it made the most sense to work directly with them and procure directly from them as well.
Absolutely. Again, India protected its traders for a very long time, and only recently has the APMC Act been, or the Agricultural Produce Marketing Cooperatives Act or something of that sort, right? That's been, what have they done? They have made sure that you become more proactive with farmers. They want corporates to work with farmers and startups to work with farmers. I don't want to call you a trader because that's wrong, because you're a tech company. What happens to all these traders with companies like you coming on board? Do they become part of the company? They give you information because they have been serving this purpose for a few hundred years now.
Absolutely.
But absolutely, they don't understand what should go where. Like the tomato example that you gave, 50 kgs go to Chennai, 50 kgs go to Bangalore, in one place the price will inflate.
Right.
What happens to these guys? Just a thought.
No, it's a great question, because oftentimes when people look at the term disruption, right? You look at startups coming in, disrupting a new industry, and disruption basically suggests that you're removing everybody who's been there before. But reality, that's not going to work in an industry like this. Disruption, a real disruption in this industry, means how do you work with people who are already there? Correct. Because the scale of the problem is so large. It's an $800 billion market in B2B food alone, not even considering the B2C side of things. So the scale of the problem is so large, the quantity of people involved is so large. You have over half the country's population drawing the primary source of income from agriculture. Yes. And for a startup to come in and claim they're going to disrupt the entire thing and bypass everybody, it's hubris. And it's not possible. Yeah. Again, the people who've been keeping this industry going for the past 100 years have been doing so not out of any malintent. The work that they've been doing has been very useful, and India is by far one of the most effective food supply chains in the world. The difference is not as efficient as it can be. At the end of the day, you have 120 different SKUs coming to every single thelawala and kirana store in the country. Yes. That is mind-blowing levels of complexity being managed by this industry. But could it be done more efficiently? Yes. And that's what tech platforms like us are trying to come in and help solve, saying not just WayCool, but can other players like us adopt a demand-driven kind of an approach, help with the information transparency on both sides of the supply chain. Demand is important. That's yes, important. Exactly. Okay. And help reduce food wastage that way.
Okay. A couple of thoughts on history. Many years ago, the retailers tried this in 2005-06. Put in insane amounts of money, but you have to realize no smartphones back then, right. No data capture. There was just definitely lag, and there was no trickle down of impacting farmers. Why did the retail direct sourcing model fail? Why do you think? Because you've studied farmers, you've studied retail, but now tech platforms can scale it better. Why do you think?
Well, it's a very, very good question. It comes down to what does quality mean in this space? It's a difficult question to answer, because quality inherently in this industry has been very subjective. Now, what does a B2C consumer do when they go shopping? They want to go touch and feel the vegetables, right? What are they touching and feeling for? They don't necessarily understand. They look at physical appearance, they look at color and things like that. But that's your modern trade space, your kiranas, your sort of retail space, where physical appearances matter. Unfortunately, that doesn't work the same way on the back-end side. Okay. On a farm is not a manufacturing facility. You will get big size, small size, different colors, misshapen kind of products coming off. All of them are grown the exact same way. So nutritional content-wise, there's no difference whatsoever. But your B2C retail consumer will not want something that is like a very, very large potato. They want something that is a little bit more manageable as a size. Home, yeah. Exactly. So when you build supply chains for one channel alone, which is a modern trade channel in this example, then you are disregarding the complexity on the back end of things. That's the first issue, is what happens with the rest of the quality. Because if you look at the normal distribution curve of quality that comes off of a farm, you have to be solving for 100% of it. You can't solve for the middle 50% and then tell the farmer, do what you will with the rest of it. Because the mandi players also know that the best quality, quote unquote best, is going to directly into modern trade. They'll give rock bottom prices for the balance of, as they should, which is what happens in a fair market economy. The second issue happens when you look at the, so first is on the quality, second is on the planning side of things. a farm traditionally will plant on day 0, harvest on day 60. We consume every day. So they automatically have a demand-supply mismatch.
Yes.
In the WayCool model, we help do a staggered cultivation planning for the farmers. So they plant on day 1, day 7, day 14, day 21, etc. So their cultivation that they do, their harvesting, more closely matches our demand on the front end. Now, what do you do is you're a modern trade player, and your farmer says, I'm going to give you 5 tons every 60 days, and you only want 50 kgs every day. So there's a clear mismatch that way. So because of those two main reasons, the only model that we feel will work in this kind of an industry is what we call an Omni-Product, Omni-Channel approach. And that's WayCool's model as well.
Tell me about that strategy.
Absolutely. So Omni-Channel is self-explanatory, where you tell a farmer, listen, I will buy 100% of what you can create, and it is up to me, it is my responsibility to find a liquidation channel for it. We are not a marketplace model.
B2B or B2C?
Absolutely. We're not a marketplace model. We're an inventory-led model, so we take inventory risk as well. But again, it's 24 hours.
Guaranteed buyback?
Not on the. So what we buy, we will make sure that we sell. And it's possible because we have demand visibility as well, and because we do the demand focused planning. So the first is the omni-channel approach. We sell to hotels and restaurants. We sell to kirana stores, so e-commerce, modern trade.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah. E-commerce, modern trade,
exports
everything.
Market, everything.
Exports. Oh, everything, whole deal.
Yes.
Even processing, food processing.
Yes, very much. Because what happens with the smallest tomatoes that come off of the farm, oftentimes they're going to catch up manufacturing. So it's examples like that help you understand that, there is a market for everything in India. And if you build for only one of those markets, you're disregarding the actual complexity for the rest of the markets. And it's very tied together. So that's the omni-channel side of things. On the product side of things is, why do we as WayCool do fruits and vegetables and rice and pulses and dairy products at the same time? It is because the channel that we're building or the pipeline that we're building to the channels on the front end is already established. If my truck is going to deliver fruits and vegetables to a kirana store every 3 days in the morning, what else can I put onto that same truck? So the kirana store...
do dairy, pulses also.
Very much. Yeah. A kirana store's basket of material might be about 20 to 25% of fruits and vegetables, and then 30% of staples, 20% of FMCG, and the balance of other SKUs, dairy, spices, etc. Today, WayCool can offer 80% of that basket. And we are building that 80% of the basket. The only thing we don't do yet is meat. And we're building that 80% of that basket with deep farm level linkage on the back end as well, because that helps us with quality, helps us with stability, and helps us with visibility into understanding what is the item that's growing best on the back end, what is the item that people are buying on the front end, and how can you map those together very nicely.
My question now is something deeper, larger. Whatever you mentioned, it will not take 5 years to do this, right? It's a 20-year journey?
Yes.
It is a 20-year journey. I want you to call it out, because most of the businesses today in the startup world are built for 5 to 7 years. It doesn't work. You would agree?
I completely agree. I think if you want to get rich quick scheme, you can't be an agri.
You can't be an agri.
No matter how much money you plow into the industry, it will take 60 days for a tomato to grow. So you can't speed that up.
Is that long?
Yeah,
that's true.
It is.
Right? And combine that with multiple crops and all that, the complexity is a lot more, right? So it is a business that's built for 15 to 20 year horizon, and you're on that. So quick thoughts. You also have warehouses of your own?
Yes.
You do. You obviously lease them, of course. This is a cold chain.
Not necessarily.
This is also general storage.
Yes. We have about 5% cold chain capacity, and that's for exotics like apples or dairy and things like that. But our supply chains are as fast as 4 hours from harvesting to reaching customer location to up to about 24 to 36 hours on average.
Should we say Hosur to Bangalore, Kolar to Bangalore would be the approach?
Roughly, yes.
Something of that sort. Chennai would source from where though?
Similar regions. For us, we look at, so there's a reason we're only in South and West India for now. Within Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Coimbatore, Mumbai and Pune, and of course associated tier 2 and tier 3 cities around those locations. But we build supply chains in and around those cities that we choose to operate. We will expand into new cities very carefully, only if there is a very strong supply chain linkage from like where we already are to where we want to go into the future.
Okay, so today the B2B vertical is larger than the B2C?
We are a B2B company.
Complete B2B.
Yeah.
Okay, but you can supply to B2C companies like e-commerce guys. Like.
Yes, absolutely. So we are back-end partners for almost every single e-commerce player in this industry, both on the private labeling side and just supplying normal commodities. And we have our own brands as well that we own and operate.
I want to talk about the brands. I'm glad you brought me into that conversation. Private labels. A lot of the retailers do private labels. It's good to know a tech company doing private labels. Why did you get into this? Because I know you could do contract manufacturing and play a safe role. That, okay, look, I've bought it from the farm, I know the supply, I will contract manufacture it for you and sell it out. You can outsource the manufacturing to a firm if you want to. But why get into brands? It's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, it really is. And it's a fun ball game to be in.
This is your B2C play?
That's a B2C play. Okay. It's our own brands. Now, the brands go into our B2B pipelines, but it's a brand of our own. So you'll be able to find our brands in modern trade, e-commerce, and kirana store locations. So we have 5 brands that we own and operate today. 2 of them are in the fruits and vegetables space. One is called Desi Fresh, which is in India's best produce taken to the world, and other is L'Exotique, which is the world's best produce taken to India. Then you have Kitchenji, which is more of your like staples, spices, dry fruits, and nuts kind of thing. Madhuram is also staples, rice and pulses brand. And finally, Freshies, which is our South Indian foods, ready to cook kind of product category, and of course dairy and.
So would you talk about these private labels of your own? Private labels attacking categories where there are incumbents already, and that you want to disrupt their businesses. Now I'm using the word disruption because they would have done it the older ways. The masala guys, for example, have been around forever in the Erode and Coimbatore region and Tirupur region. They're dominant. I don't want to name them, but I can say Archie's, Shakti, and all of them are around.
Sure.
Are those the guys you're going after?
So we look at it from a very product-focused approach. And honestly, it has to do with how we kind of stumbled into the whole B2C foray in the first place. We started by looking at, we started the company by doing fruits and vegetables. We did that for about 1.5 years before we started doing rice and pulses as well. And when we were doing rice, we were doing rice distribution to kirana stores, and then one day, completely unbranded by the way, it was just a normal orange packaging. We started very, very simplistically to understand how the market moved effectively. And then one day, the orange color bag that we were packing our rice in, the mill that we were partnering with didn't have any more stock of that bag. So they gave it to us in a blue color bag. So we distributed that blue color bag, and we actually got a lot of returns from our kirana stores. And when we had to call them and say, boss, it's the same exact rice. I don't know why you're sending it back to us. And they said, no. My customers want that orange color bag. And then it's like a light bulb went off for us. It's like, even for a commodity as basic as rice, not basmati rice, normal idli rice, even for commodity that basic, customers wanted and appreciated having a brand on it. So then we understood the brand is not just having a chapa and saying that, okay, we have better quality and therefore pay me more margin because of this brand. But the brand stands for something. And for us, given that we have the full back-end connection to the farm, so not only understand where the supply comes from, but also how the cultivation is happening at the farm level, our ability to have control over quality and stability of supply is much, much greater. So we started with the rice brand, then we realized that we already have the rice and the pulses on the back end. What more can we do with this? On the same value chain, we acquired a company called Banani Foods about 4.5-5 years ago now, who owned the brand name Freshies. They had idli dosa batter. Now, what do you need for idli dosa batter? You need rice and you need pulses. So we already had the back end ready. We pumped those same products into our idli dosa batter manufacturing, and it had a much better quality product coming out of it because we control the entire product value chain. So that's been our approach. So rather than looking at particular brands or commodities that we want to go after, we look at products where we have a very strong supply chain strength and strong supply chain depth, and then see where we can forward integrate and add value onto those to see where we can build stronger brands and stronger products on the front end.
On the fruits and vegetables side, on the brand side, is there particular fruits that you're strong at?
Oh, absolutely. So it would be very difficult to build a robust value chain for all 120 different fruits and vegetables that are there in the country. We selected about 30 of the topmost. Those 30 account for about 80% of the fruits and vegetables basket for India. And of course, OTP, onion, tomato, potato are the main ones. Then you have cauliflower, green chili, apples, bananas, pomegranates, oranges. So those are the value chains that we built out, and we built them pretty aggressively by making sure that we go as far back as we think there is sufficient ROIC available for us to go back. So
okay, I know why you're playing the consumption game, because India's consumption is growing and you don't want to miss that.
Yes.
What percentage of your revenues would be this B2C? Would you want it to be large in the long run, say 3-4 years?
You mean the brands play?
On the brands play, yeah.
It'll definitely be a significant part of what we're doing. Because already, I think over the past couple of years itself, we've more than doubled our, I guess, the B2C brands revenue that we have as a company. And it'll continue to grow because this is something that the brand has an ability to to retain value and retain mind share with the customer, because all the work that we're doing on the back end in terms of making sure the farmer's getting paid fairly, in terms of the quality assurance on the entire value chain, value addition and processing is happening ethically and safely as well. All of that activity that we're doing can only be encapsulated if you have a brand on it. So given that, we'll definitely be expanding the brand's portfolio more moving forward.
Sanjay, we spoke about brands. I also want to talk about, big brands. They're the elephants in the room, these FMCG companies. And, they've been sourcing from farmers, they've been distributing, but you also work with them. Why do you work with them, and is it good to work with them? Is it nice that they're working with a startup? Yes, for me personally it's nice, but do they take data from you? How do they work with you to use that data to deliver quality products?
So it's a great opportunity to be in partnership with some of these brands. So we do distribution for basically every large FMCG company in India. And the reason we do that is because, one, we can learn from them, obviously. They're incredibly entrenched in this industry. They've been doing this for a very, very long time. But they're also very innovative in how they approach. So without naming the name, one of the brands that we work with, the companies that we work with, has completely re-engineered the entire warehousing and inventory management flow to flow through our warehouse in a particular way to maximize the cross-docking effect that we can generate for them, which not only helped us understand how to better manage inventory flow on the back end, but also how to manage customer order taking on the front end as well. So it's things like that you're able to get the innovation that a startup like ours brings, and the scale and the might and the power that an intention company player has. So when those two worlds meet, that's when magic happens.
So they're coming to you for modern trade or kirana?
For kirana stores. Yes,
General
trade, exactly.
Okay. And you have big numbers, right? You work with 200K farmers?
Yes.
And retailers?
About 200K roughly as well.
How many retailers, including kirana stores?
So customer points in total about 200K.
Customers 200K?
Yes, and the bulk of which is definitely kirana.
Okay, bulk of it is kirana. So it's 200K farmers also?
Yes.
That's amazing. And tell me, these FMCG guys, what they do? Sugar, pulses, they do oils. What products do you choose? Do you have the wherewithal to say that, okay, this is what I'm going to work on? Or do they say, take all products of mine?
So the way we work with us, we go by geography and go by pin code. And I think that's the more traditional distribution model as well, where a large FMCG player will come and say, in this particular pin code, I'm looking for a distributor. And we'll say, sure, we'll do distribution for you. And whatever products that they give to us or that they want to do distribution for in that region, we either do the sales process for them as well, and we get orders on their behalf and then do distribution. But the best part for us is that on the same truck that's doing distribution of their products, we're also sending our products.
Extra income for you.
Yeah, because for us, we wanted to capture 80% of the kirana store's basket, effectively. And of that 80%, FMCG is a very, very big portion of that. Now, I'm not going to get into biscuits and noodles and all that today, because that's a very intensely branded, intensely competitive segment. But it's a segment that sells very, very well for the kirana store. So if the kirana store wants it, why not offer it to them effectively?
Okay. There were a couple of startups that came in and said we'd connect with the general trade. I'm glad you're doing many things, right? We'll get into those in a bit also. The couple of startups that said they'll do general trade, they will supply, they'll become the super stockists and supply to these kiranas. But they've all run out of money to speak, in a way. What you're saying, to focus on one category is really, it's a tough category, the kirana category. Same thing, the retailers made the same mistake. The large retailers said they could take on the kiranas, but 90% of India is still general trade, right?
Yes. And I think that's been one thing for us, that we believe kiranas are here to stay. And no matter what kind of disruption comes into the space for the next 10 years or so, kirana segment will always be strong, because as long as majority of the country is on like weekly or bi-weekly salaries, they will need to be able to have a kirana store partner that they can go and work with for regular purchases. So unless we dramatically change how people in India get paid, I don't excuse me.
No problem.
I don't necessarily think that they'll be changing how they do purchasing either.
That's nobody's told me that. That's interesting. I knew that India, because the larger city, because of availability of real estate, you don't want to walk long distances to these big superstores, supermarkets. You have the kiranas all the time. But it's also about incomes, you mentioned.
It's about working capital, absolutely.
So they call it bata in the old days, where you get paid on a weekly basis. So you go shop in the weekends at these smaller stores, right? Absolutely. I never looked at it from that perspective. Talk about that. Is majority of India on that?
I don't have the exact numbers, but I know that the number of people who are shopping at kirana stores are people who clearly form the bulk of the country. I mean, 90% of grocery trade in India still happens on an offline kirana store basis, not even on an offline modern trade basis. So I think that there are definitely trends that are competing with them through quick commerce and e-commerce and all.
Well said, because I suddenly had this thought, all the real estate guys, all the construction workers, they get paid on a weekly basis actually, or a bi-weekly basis, and that's when they go spend in local stores. Absolutely. So this is a new angle to me. It's like invoked a new thought in me. So that's going to stay. It is.
Yeah.
It is going to stay. The general trade is going to stay.
That's our thesis. I think general trade will stay. They'll be more entrenched. In fact, they will be starting to offer a differentiated service to their customers as well. So, for example, conversations that we're having with our kirana store partners is we're able to do contract manufacturing for them. Yeah. So, if you have Ram specialty stores, for example, we're able to get them Ram stores branded sugar and staples and things like that. We do that today as well. We have our own contract manufacturing.
Huge. Yes. Some powerful general trade guys. Kirana stores, they'll be single store, but they'll be there for 70, 80 years. Right?
Absolutely.
So, they take their own brands now? Interesting.
They do.
You want to talk about that? What do they buy from you guys?
So, we have a pretty large contract manufacturing unit that we have in Krompet, in Hosur, in Jigani as well. We do lots of this packaging for kirana store customers as well as like larger scale e-commerce and quick commerce players. The story for us is very, very simple because we are first and foremost a product value chain kind of player. Correct. And as we take over the entire product value chain and have control over it, we're able to offer differentiated services to different people. So if you have a kirana store that wants to get the entire FMCG assortment, or let's say staples assortment of all the dals, multiple different rices, sugar, salt, etc., in their own brands in like 250 gram to 5 kg packets, we can offer that. If you want to get 1 ton truck full of 25 kg 25 kg bags of rice, we can offer that as well. So we have a extremely responsive supply chain that we built on the back end with an understanding of this is the kind of company we wanted to build.
People don't realize that there are 10 million kirana stores in India, or maybe more. That's the number that everybody
official number, yes.
Official number. But there's many. You get down this road, there's a kirana store. So it's amazing, right? On one level, sourcing from farmers, which is basically making sure that it's a pull-led kind of a supply chain where there's data used and farmer knows what he's supplying where or which distribution that it goes to and where it reaches in the end. I'm glad you're connecting. It's farm to fork in one level.
Yes.
But I would say it's farm to store today also. Right? You also do farm to fork, which is through your brand.
Yes.
Right? Building for the farmer and the kirana, if people are watching this, is the most difficult. People have to realize that. So to now you help the kiranas obviously get branded their own brand of rice and pulses or whatever. What about the farmer? Now the farmer will say, okay, you buy from me, that's great. But can you help me grow better? Is that something that you want to get into? That's something that's so difficult to do today.
Yes, it's difficult for a number of different reasons, but at WayCool, it's kind of the heart of what we try to do. Because for us, we look at the biggest difference that we have in terms of how we interact with our farmers is that we don't approach farmers as a person who needs charity. For example, we approach farmers as businessmen. Where we look at the farmer's P&L. These are entrepreneurs. These are entrepreneurs that have an asset of land, and they're trying to find ways to maximize that asset and maximize the value they can get off the asset. So you can look at the yield per acre, but at WayCool we look at the value per acre. We don't look at the growth in revenue. We look at the net income basis on the bottom of the farmer P&L. Farmers who work with WayCool get a 35% increase in net income on a harvest-to-harvest basis. And we have more than enough case studies that we've done to understand exactly how this is happening. Because for us as a company, we approach this on a full P&L basis. So it's not just a how do I help the farmer get more revenue for what they're growing, but how can I tweak what they're growing, how they're growing it, so the cost of cultivation comes down, but also the value per kilogram, value per acre, therefore, goes up.
Okay, why did you say no to yield per acre? Is there a particular reason?
So because let's take, if you're growing a certain commodity and you're getting 10 rupees per kg, you might be at a negative 5% net income at this stage. If I double that quantity that you're growing, your percentage is still negative. So you're digging the hole even deeper. So if you look at it on a value per acre basis, if you can get that 10 rupee per kg to 20 rupee per kg, then minus 5% becomes positive 5%. So even if you stay at the 100 kgs let's assume you do 100 kgs before 100 kgs now, by focusing on the value per acre, you've turned from a negative net income to a positive net income, which that's the first and foremost goal that we have in place.
It's interesting that you're now saying think of themselves as real entrepreneurs who understand this value of price. They usually don't understand that, do they? They only know what the other farmer next door is growing this, he's getting X price. So that's how they drop the prices also. There's a herd mentality in farming in India.
Yes, when given the ammunition of information, farmers are able to make incredibly smart decisions for themselves. And we've been humbled many times by farmers who tell us exactly what we should be doing, because they know what they need, they know what needs to be done in this industry, but there aren't many business models that are built with the farmer focus in mind. So for us, with the demand-led supply chain, where we tell the farmer, listen, this is what we need. We know for a fact, every day for the next 3 months, this is our quantity that we'll need to be buying from you. Can you grow towards this requirement? They're able to make their plans accordingly.
Your toughest journey for 7.5 years for you and your co-founder, Karthik, right?
Karthik, right.
What's it been? Is it having no money to run this, or is it that's the general entrepreneur thing? We always run out of money, right? Or has it been India's complex? Why do this? That kind of question. Or would farmers understand tech, or a combination of all these?
It's been, a cliche to say all of it. There's always a new problem to solve every day. But one of the main things that keeps coming up even now is a question of talent, right? Because when you say you're working with farmers in this space, the automatic assumption is that you're a social enterprise. Therefore you're a charity, and you're not in this business to be making money. Where we've looked at it from a very different angle, because for us, myself and Karthik, all the investors that we have on board, the full now 2,400 employees at WayCool, the entire group of people here believe that the only way to institute sustainable change in this industry is through a for-profit model that has positive externalities built into it. Even something as simple as ESG, right? Like, we have a climate smart is business smart kind of an approach. I shall walk us through it a little bit as well. But the biggest issue has been hiring talent. Is how do you convince somebody to join an industry like this, which is not a sexy industry to be in. It's very get your hands dirty kind of industry, and it is oftentimes it's thankless as well. If you do your job perfectly 100% of the time, your customer will necessarily acknowledge it. But if that one day your truck goes an hour and a half late to the customer, you'll get 25 phone calls a day effectively with complaints about that. So talent has been one of the biggest issues, as other hyper-funded startups are able to offer outsized kind of comp packages that we necessarily can't compete with. But we've been doing what we can. We've been 7.5 years in the space so far.
Where do you want to cut your losses in these 7.5 years of experience? Do you know what works, what doesn't, or is it constant experimentation? The reason I ask is we're all in the world of VCs where they put in money and they will expect, which is good, but the shorter timelines, when we spoke earlier, that's 15-year horizon that we need to look at. I want you to tell me fairly that what could, in business, absolute business terms, when it comes to agri, where do you want to cut your losses? Are there certain categories that you don't want to touch? There are certain categories, like you said, working with these FMCG guys, great. Build their distribution, makes money, great. You work with exporters, definitely purchase price, get it, yes. Between the impact story, working with farmers, and between making money, where do you want to focus on for the next 18 months to 2 years? Where do you want to go?
I think for us, the next 2 years is going to be focusing on two different journeys. The first is our tech stack. About 6 months ago, we officially spun off the entire tech team into an independent tech subsidiary called Sensor. Sensor's mandate is quite simple. At the time of our 2025 IPO, they have to get more than 50% of the revenue from outside of WayCool compared to inside of WayCool. And they've already started. They've already signed an international client in North Africa, who's launched their startup on the basis of our tech stack that we already have. They're a fruits and vegetables distribution player, which started about a month and a half ago.
What is Sensor do?
Sensor is basically the entire tech stack that we built over the past 7.5 years, which is the farm management, the the procurement planning software, the distribution, warehousing, all of that, all of the tech that we as a company use, we have bundled into 5 different modules, which we're able to spin off as independent SaaS or services-based products.
Are there market opportunities for these SaaS products?
Absolutely. It's one of the most exciting opportunities to be in this space. Every expo that we go to, the sensor stall often has more visitors than the WayCool stall, because the approach of having a tech stack for the food supply chain, not just in India but internationally as well, is something that we are very, very excited and bullish about for the next 18 months.
Okay. You know, Sanjay, you're handling so many things, technology on one level, distributors on one level, your distributions on one level, and supply chain, let me put it that way. You've got the B2C in terms of brands. Where do you want to spend your time? Because you're doing many things, and I say it can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing, depending on how you manage it as a leader. In the end of the day, having a co-founder helps there. So what are you? Tech and agri. Obviously, you're splitting agri and tech very nicely, so that tomorrow all these large companies, distribution companies, can use Sensor, for example, to source and use that. That's definitely valuable. But what makes it difficult for you? You have 3 product lines.
Yes.
Do you give it time? Do you find time for all these things, or do you have business heads heading these things and they have targets? How does that work?
It's an incredibly professionally run business at this stage. So we have CEOs featured in each line of business, and they are taking full P&L accountability at this stage as well. The way it works is we don't necessarily see ourselves as doing too many different things. We do 3 things. We're a tech-enabled value chain company. So we have a fruits and vegetables value chain, staples value chain, and dairy value chain.
Correct.
That's it for WayCool. Everything else that we do, whether it be the contract manufacturing or the sensor tech stack or the agro farm management and farmer engagement that we do,
it's on these categories.
They're all enablers for these 3 business lines that we have.
So that's how you've simplified it, right?
Yes.
And which takes a lot of your time. New experimentation, because you like tech. Do you like experimenting a lot?
For me personally, the tech side is very exciting. You have a lot of exciting things that the government is doing on both on the ONDC side. For UPI has been a big part for our company as well. For example, we try to avoid cash in the company. We don't pay any of our farmers in cash. We pay them exclusively online. We have a kirana stores who pay us on QR code payments as well, who do not give us cash anymore. So that's just the tip of the iceberg as to what is possible in terms of the disruption of WayCool's business model.
So Sensor is the next 18 months.
Sensor is the next 18 months for sure. And it's in Sensor and brands are going to be the 2 biggest pushes that we have as a company.
And will the farmer have to use the app or something? Is there a WayCool app that he uses?
There is.
Some individual who goes to each farm and then says, okay, I'm going to buy for you, my truck's going to come. Is that the model?
So it's a blended model. And the Outgrow, so we have a farmer advisory team called Outgrow. And the Outgrow mobile application is, I think, our flagship application. We have an incredible, about 2 lakh downloads so far, completely organic downloads. And we're getting, I think, roughly about 10,000 daily active users, monthly active users who are using the application on the farmer side. Farmers can use this application for general advisory. They can take pictures of, let's say, they take pictures of a plant, and then our AI model tells them what potential infestation that might be. It is also connected to our IoT device called the GWX100, which is basically a microclimatic weather station that's deployed on the farm itself, which can look at.
Are you a fan of these things?
Oh, 100%.
There's so many of them are trying to do it, or have tried it in the last 10 years.
Yes.
Do you like the current technologies in farm management?
I think this is I think this is just the beginning. I think that there's so much more that can be done, and I'm excited by so many different startups that are trying to experiment with this. In fact, we're working closely with many other startups as well, because we have access to farmers on the front end also in terms of the market linkage for farmers. So we're able to work with startups and sort of experiment on farm itself. But the idea of having the GWX100, which is our IoT device, having that look at the microclimatic weather, compare that with satellite imagery to see what is the the temperature and weather conditions for the next couple of days moving forward. We're able to, with the fairly good degree of accuracy, predict pest infestations and pest attacks multiple days in advance. So we can proactively deploy pesticides and proactively take measures to make sure that the crop is protected and the farmer's income is protected as well.
Okay. So quick thoughts on government policy, the central government stream making everything go into a stack. Agri-stack, ONDC is one thing where where distributors can work with the ONDC, right? ONDC is also for smaller businesses where everything is digitally captured, their invoices and everything. Do you like a stack kind of approach, and do you think agri-stack is going to be a big thing? You work closely in the western and southern regions, so what's been government response in these regions? And now vis-a-vis center, what's happening?
Yeah, well, I think I don't envy the government because you have to have a very customized approach to each individual state almost, because the problems to be solved are so vastly different. The architecture of how individual states have set up their existing infrastructure and how the farming networks in those locations work as well are all vastly different. So they'll have to have a very customized approach to solving each of these problems. But to their credit, they're working closely with private players as well. So we're actually leading the agri community in the B20, which is the Business 20 part of the G20 summit coming up. Being very closely involved with the government in terms of understanding different kinds of policies that might be beneficial for different sectors that we work with. So it's a very non-trivial problem to solve that can be oversimplified very, very easily. But to their credit, they're listening to trying multiple different approaches, and I'm very, very bullish about the future.
Yeah, that's great. I have to come back to the personal. By the way, it's Ugadi, and it's funny. It's Ugadi tomorrow. It's a harvest festival. Or start of a new season of farming.
Right.
So it's a very, it's a very ominous occasion to talk about agriculture. So happy Ugadi to you.
Likewise.
Right. And my thought process next thing is how do you manage 2,400 people, you and Karthik?
Yeah.
Right. That's one. And my last question would be, what are you reading? Recommendations of movies, maybe art also to our audience.
So how do we manage the people? God knows. I mean, the team is incredible. I think we try to do decentralized decision making as much as we can. So we have multiple different CEOs, multiple different business units, and they each build and manage their own independent teams. But what we do at the corporate level is try to make sure that they have access to resources that they need, and they have access to support functions, and also that they understand the importance of synergies and how do they work with each other, how do we work across the aisle effectively. And that's been a very exciting learning experience over the past multiple years. But once we figure out how to manage this many people, I'll definitely let you know.
I'm going to spend more time with you because I'm only at 7.
Yeah.
You're doing 2,400, so that's different.
Yeah.
And I'll sit with you for those lessons. We'll do another podcast on that for sure, managing people. Books and music or
so books, absolutely. I think there's my favorite book for the business book. It's called Broken Windows, Broken Business.
Okay.
It's basically extremely simplified, where it says that it explains to you why the little things matter. And the rationale is taking from the New York City Police Department's approach to how they cleaned up crime in that city and how do they put that against business ethics and business economics in like standard B2C facing in service industries. So Broken Windows, Broken Business, one of the best books I've ever read.
It's about the New York Police Department.
Yes.
I'm going to check that out.
It's a fascinating book. Fascinating book.
Broken Windows, Broken Glass.
Broken Windows, Broken Business.
Broken Windows, Broken Business. I'm going to put that in the description for sure. And what else?
In terms of movies, one of my favorite movies of all times is The Founder. It's about the McDonald's founding story.
Ray Kroc.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It was mind-blowing because not only did I not know that he wasn't the actual founder, but there's one scene in that where he's drawing out the actual McDonald's flow on a tennis court, which was very insightful to show the amount of detail the founder has to go into to sort of define how these things that we look at as like, oh, this is an amazing model that they developed. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's an incredible amount of work.
50 plus.
Exactly.
And that means there's hope for all of us.
Exactly. It's never too late. It's never too late.
So those are the recommendations. Yes. Sport is very important to you?
Yes. I'm basketball, rugby, weightlifting. If I didn't have those, I'd probably lose my mind.
And you said weightlifting. Is it proper weightlifting?
Powerlifting only.
Powerlifting only.
Yeah. I don't not for bodybuilding poses, but
you
clearly.
Need that if you're building, if you need the mental health and the physical health if you're building a startup. So all the best to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Thanks.